Hello, uh, my name is Trey Folkman,
And I'm Connor Albright.
and this is our presentation for CRC cards. Um, so CRC stands for Class Responsibility Collaborator, and as the name might suggest, they're physical cards that you use, and on them they have class responsibilities and the collaborators for those classes. So as we'll take a look at in the next section, the formatting of the cards is going to be fairly simple. They're typically done on index cards, so there's not a whole lot of space to work with because they're not supposed to be super detailed, but it essentially is just the class name at the top of the card. On the left hand side, you have the responsibilities of that class, and then on the right side, you have the collaborators of that class. In this next slide, we will see an example of that. So here's an example of the class responsibility collaborator card. As you can see, classes on top, and the responsibilities of that class are on the left, and then the collaborators of that class are on the right. And collaborators are basically anything that the class inherits from, which we'll talk a little bit more later. So this is a example of a CRC card for our project for Trail Roo, and I did it on a plausible class because we don't really have set classes as of now. So I just did one on a probable possible class that we could have, and I decided to call it marker for the marking capabilities of the map to like show wildlife places or bathrooms or places of interest that the user is allowed to mark on our app on the map. And so the marker class obviously would determine the marker, give the user the ability to pick what type of marker it is, give the ability to the user to place the marker, and it would also have to access the map. And so there would also be a location class and a map class. So the marker class will know where the user is, and would also have access to the map so it can determine where to place the marker, where the person is, and also have the map so the marker can be placed. And so that's just a simple representation of how a CRC card would work if you were to do one for a class in our application, or any class really in any application.
Yeah, and then some advantages for CRC cards. The biggest thing is just that they're like physical cards and they're just cheap. So like you can just get a bunch of index cards and you can start make CRC cards for a project. And they also help keep the actual size of a class down, like in the coding. It encourages more smaller classes than larger classes. And then they're just portable. So like if you have like a meeting or somewhere, you can just easily grab the stack of cards and bring them out and like pass them around and have like an actual tangible resource to look at for the project. And then some disadvantages. Again, like the limited amount of information they hold, it can either be like a pro or a con, just depending on the context. So because they are small cards, so they do limit the amount of information still. Also, there's like larger programs, you're going to have a lot more cards to keep track of and use. And it just take a long time to go through those cards. And then also, since like when you have your CRC modeling session, we'll go over next, the cards, or sorry, not the cards, it's just like hard to get like a time organized where everyone can be together to analyze those cards. And then for a CRC modeling session, pretty much it's just like a session where the group meets to discuss the CRC cards and the program. So it's just like a brainstorming session. It's always done after the cards are created for the program. So after you make the CRC cards. And then this is just like the set steps to it. So you need to organize the team, and then you just want to like determine like the different classes that your program or what you're making is going to have, responsibilities and collaborators. And once you just like have an idea of the classes, responsibility, and collaborators, that's really where you can start to create and make your CRC cards and gather them together. And then you need to schedule the modeling session and then discuss the CRC cards at the modeling session.
Yeah, if I could just make a note, organizing the CRC modeling team. So CRC cards and CRC modeling sessions go together usually, but it's usually a single team that is formatted. And we just forgot to mention that aspect of it because it's just fairly simple. I mean, they just organize a specific team to make these class cards, determine classes, their responsibilities and collaborators, and then they come together and they talk about it. So that's, if you were confused, anyone, about where this modeling team comes from, that's where it is. And yeah, in conclusion, CRC cards are fairly useful for their physical nature, and they can be distributed easily amongst people. And they're easy to understand. They're not very complex. And it's good. It's easier to determine some good functionalities for classes with these cards, as well as determining some of the base level collaborators that they will have in the classes they will inherit from. So it's really, they're good for getting a base understanding of the classes for the program. And since they are in physical in nature, they're easily distributed, easily understood by multiple people, which would be that CRC modeling team we were talking about before. A large group of people can get their hands on these quite easily, and then just clearly understand what is being meant. But also, they're not very useful for larger systems, because when you have so many different classes, they can just be too many cards, and it just gets too hard to analyze every single card and to organize that meeting, that modeling session, because of the vastness of the classes that are in the program. So they're not too useful for really big programs. And that would be pretty much everything about CRC cards, unless Connor has anything he'd like to
No,
add.
I'm good. I think that's good.
And there's our references. And that's it. Thanks, guys.
Sweet. Thanks.